In recent years, LEGO games haven't been all too great in my opinion. Even in my early days of gaming, I didn't care for them. I don't know, something about them always made me lose interest. Now, I'm mainly talking about the licensed ones, and I have heard that stuff like LEGO City isn't half bad. And I know there are a lot of people who have fond memories of the earlier licensed games. Although there is one game that I do have fond memories of, and that's of course LEGO Racers. I used to play this game with my dad on an old PC we had in our storage room when I was like 5 years old or so. I would always hold the gas and my dad would steer. Yeah, I was only holding one button, but I was having fun regardless. And because I played it when I was that young, LEGO Racers is one of the first real games I ever played. But now I haven't played this game ever since the mid to late 2000s, so I was eager to get back to it. And man, as soon as I booted up the game, all the memories just flooded back. Hearing the music and sound effects after all this time was pretty incredible. But don't worry, none of this prevented me from looking at it critically. So why don't we dive into LEGO Racers and see if it's still any good. But more importantly, how well does it separate itself from other kart racers of the time? See, this game came out in an era when a lot of companies were trying to ride off the success of Mario Kart. Mascot racing games were everywhere. Sonic did it, Crash Bandicoot did it, Mickey Mouse did it, even South Park tried their hand at the kart racing formula. Now I think it's important to understand that being a clone of something isn't necessarily a bad thing. As long as you bring enough new things to the table, the game won't come off as a ripoff. Diddy Kong Racing is an excellent example of this. It brings in enough new mechanics that make it feel distinct. So does LEGO Racers pull this off? Well, in my opinion, yes. Yes, it does. This game's main gimmick is all of the customization elements that it offers. First off, you can design your own character and name them, and you're given a wide array of clothing and headgear to make the character your own. You then have the game's pride and joy, the vehicle customization. This is a LEGO game after all, so building your own race car was kind of a no-brainer. You start with a frame and can select from different bricks to build your car, and it's pretty robust for what it is. And I'm sure you can make some cool stuff if you put in the time, or you could just make something really stupid. Either way, I think this is a pretty neat concept that makes LEGO Racers stand out amongst the sea of other kart racers of the time. However, the act of building the car can be pretty clunky and takes some getting used to. And this is just a minor nitpick, but the sound effect that plays when you're cycling through the bricks isn't very pleasant. It just sounds like a very painful fart. As for the visuals, I think they've held up well enough. It won't blow your mind in the slightest, but it's by no means ugly. It has a simple yet appealing look to it, and I think that's perfectly fine. Although I will say the character models still look pretty good in my opinion. The minifigures already have a blocky, simplified design, so it works out in the long run. Sure, the game probably could have looked better, but it was likely designed for lower-end PCs, so it was more accessible for children. I did experience some graphical errors though, such as seeing weird boxes around a lot of textures, but I think this was a side effect of me playing it on a modern PC, so I'll give it a pass, but it was still distracting nonetheless. With all that out of the way, let's get into the game itself. Your goal in LEGO Racers is simple: defeat each champion racer by winning all 6 circuits, which each contain 4 tracks. However, in all honesty, the track design is pretty lackluster. The tracks don't have much depth at all really, and they mainly consist of winding roads and hills. That's really it. I really feel like the game could have benefited from a bit more spectacle, since I'm really not engaged most of the time. It's not mind-numbingly boring or anything, but it felt like I was just going through the motions while playing. This did change in the later tracks, however. The turns are much sharper and the CPU players are more aggressive. Unfortunately, the sharper turns can be pretty annoying since the drifting felt very loose. When you drift, there's no weight to it, and it doesn't feel very good to pull off at all. The tracks also could have benefited from more unique theming. It's all just incredibly generic. You've got beaches, snowy areas, deserts, castles. Does this remind you of anything? Now I must stress that the tracks look fine graphically speaking, it's just the themes don't leave a huge impression on me. My guess is that the tracks were based off of Lego sets, which at the time were pretty generic as well. I still would have appreciated more creativity though. Like in the snow track, for example, you could maybe race around a giant snowman or race across crumbling ice. But I think the worst part about these tracks is that the game has the audacity to straight up reuse previous tracks in the last 3 circuits. All they do is rearrange the track order and mirror flip them. That's it. This is probably one of the laziest things I've ever seen in a video game. It just ends up feeling incredibly cheap. My guess is that the developers didn't have enough time or resources left and did it to artificially pad out the game. Either that or they just had no shame. Alright, so I've been pretty harsh on this game so far, but in all honesty, I do think there's a lot of fun to be had here. The track design might be lacking, but it's still enjoyable regardless, and I think that's due in part to the item system. It's quite similar to how items are handled in Diddy Kong Racing, in that you can stack up items to upgrade them. But it's a bit different here. You can find Lego bricks of varying colors that give you certain power-ups. Red bricks give you weapons, blue bricks give you shields, green bricks give you a speed boost, and yellow bricks give you things to throw behind you. But it doesn't end there. You can also collect white bricks that will upgrade your existing item, and you can do this up to 3 times. But there's a good deal of risk versus reward here, and it adds some much needed depth and strategy to the game, even if it is pretty minimal in the grand scheme of things. However, since you can pick up and choose what kind of power-up you get, you could easily exploit this by getting speed power-ups in first place so you can get far ahead. I personally don't do this. I prefer offensive and defensive power-ups when I'm in first, but I still figured it was worth mentioning. But the game ends off with a race against the #1 racing champion, Rocket Racer. This is definitely the toughest race in the game. Aggressive AI, tight turns, it's all here. And to top it all off, Rocket is ridiculously fast. If you want any chance of beating him, you pretty much have to play perfectly. There's not much room for error, and it almost feels unfair at times. Luckily, the track is filled with green bricks, so that helps a little bit, but even still, it's hard to handle the car when you're boosting through, so you could just end up bumping into everything due to all the tight turns. So that's pretty much all I have to say regarding Lego Racers. And at the end of the day, it's just an average kart racer. It's really nothing too special. But don't get me wrong, there are some fun gameplay elements here, but it's not much to write home about, honestly. I'd say check it out if you're curious, or just for nostalgia's sake. That's really it. But the game is also available on N64 and PS1, but I've heard the console ports have more sensitive controls, so I would just go with the PC version. But really, if you're gonna play a kart racer on PC, you might as well play CTR Nitro Fuel. Oh,